Hello and what's up everybody, Thunderbob here, and tonight I am checking out a new game. So I was offered a chance to check out the Torchlight Infinite beta early, and I jumped at that chance. I have a long history with this franchise and genre, and you can hear some of that in my previous Hellgate London video. I really loved the first two games, but I really couldn't get into Torchlight 3. This, however, is made by a different developer named XD, and when I read this was primarily a phone game that was to come later to PC, I was kind of disappointed. But I've been pleasantly surprised by the few hours I've spent with the game, and kind of interested in checking out more of it. First off, I'm usually turned off by free-to-play phone games. They typically have a ton of microtransactions, but the developer here has stated that this will not be a pay-to-win game, and that transactions will be limited to cosmetics only. And looking at the store, that appears mostly accurate. I don't see that you can really buy items or gear. There are some ways to buy like additional backpack slots, but I think you can actually buy those with the in-game currency. I'm a little confused by the store at the moment, so more on that later. Now, this is in contrast to Diablo Immortal, which I've been curious about, and I've been reading and kind of watching some videos on it. And it appears that that game is very, very laden with microtransactions, and it's largely play to win with current setup at the high end. So I'm kind of disappointed in the way Diablo Immortal's looking. I still want to check it out when it comes out. I love Diablo, but I kind of like the way that they're going with Torchlight Infinite here. Now I have to say, right off the bat, the presentation on this game is excellent. The interface is smooth and has a lot of really cool animations. The graphics are very cartoony still, like the previous games, but they have kind of almost like a cel-shaded look to them. And I actually like the look of this more than Torchlight 3, which I felt had not really evolved from those earlier games. It honestly looks amazing on a phone, and it makes me really eager to check this out on the PC, and I really hope that it does actually make the transition to PC. So there are 4 classes in the game. The melee berserker named Rihan, a ranged gun wielder, divine shot named Carino, a caster Frostfire named Gemma, and a space-time witness named Yuga? I'm not sure how to say that. But they each primarily use mana, but also have secondary mechanics. For example, the Berserker has a rage bar that builds up as you're attacking, and you can use that for a limited time buff. There's also secondary versions of each of these as you level up, though I'm still on the first tier for each of the characters I've tried. He's basically like a melee bruiser. He's a lot of fun. Most of his attacks seem melee related, though the skills seem to be somewhat interchangeable. Like, I've had some overlap between the classes, and I'll get to unlocking skills and stats in a little bit, but the skill system's pretty interesting. Next up is the Divine Shot, which is a kind of like a rogue. He's using guns. He's got a reloading mechanic, which is kind of interesting for this type of game. And you have abilities that can use up the rest of your bullets to empower them, basically. And then you have like an active reload. You can click the button to reload early, but you can run out of ammo and have to wait a second for the reload. And then there's basically abilities that use that ammo to empower them. And then we get to the Frostfire, which is like, I'd say, your primary caster of the bunch. She, I think, focuses mostly on, as her name implies, frost and fire, and her special ability, at least the initial one you get, is like an AoE zap that comes out of her every like 3 times you attack. I haven't gotten super deep with her, but she has a lot of spells, a lot of casting, and that sort of thing. A lot of these, like I said, these skills overlap. There seem to be skills that they can all utilize, and then some that are unique to that individual character. And that leads us to the final class, the one that I've played the furthest. I think I'm approaching level 10 at this point. The Space-Time Witness, which I played it just because of how goddamn ridiculous that name is. But they're pretty much a caster with a unique mechanic. You can drop down like a aura, like a an area of power. And if you're in that area, it empowers all of your attacks as long as you don't leave. And like I said before, these unique abilities, you get different versions of them. I saw a video basically where you could actually have the power follow you around. Like it's always like a step behind you, so you could stop in place and it'll catch up and empower you, rather than having like a stationary zone. So it's kind of interesting having these unique abilities that each class has. I played like 20 to 30 minutes with the first 3 classes and maybe like 2 hours with the Space-Time Witness. So I am by no means a master at this stage, but I've got a good feel for kind of how the gameplay loop works, and kind of want to talk about some of the systems. First off, this is a traditional action RPG descended from the Diablo franchise. You use your skills to murder enemies, they drop items, they grant experience. Though there's a few unexpected twists here, and I'm still pretty low level, so I'm kind of still learning all of the systems, but it's starting to come together how things all work in the game. First off are the skills, of which there are a lot. I read that there are more than 180 unique skills, and you don't actually get skill points when you level up. So it appears you get skills either as rewards for completing quests. You can buy them from vendors. It's a little confusing actually how they're doled out. I'm still working on that. I've got them from a lot of different locations. I'm assuming there's also maybe drops for them, but I haven't got that far. Beyond that, there is a talent system, and it's basically like almost replacing the stat points from like Diablo. It is not just one tree, actually. There are 24 unique skill trees full of different talents. And these talents do things like increase damage, increase cast speed, increase spell level. And it seems like it initially gives you the talent, most closely tied with your class. But it seems like as you progress, you unlock additional trees and can then fill those trees out as well. I have not gotten far enough where I have additional trees, but when I was reading the information on this game, it seems to say like you will be picking multiple trees to design your character, which is kind of similar to how Diablo 4 has been shown off lately, where you have like these multiple endgame paragon trees and you can kind of pick which ones you want to use. There's also with the skills a mechanic that reminds me a lot of runes from Diablo 3, in that you can take your base attack and then you have basically like augments for them or like modifiers for them, giving it additional ability to jump to more targets, adding damage types, adding freezing, having the attack spread, which is very, very reminiscent of Diablo 3 and its runes. And I've noticed that not all skills can take all modifiers as well. Like I could not add a way to have a triple shot on my chain lightning, for example. Some other things I noticed, there is like a player auction house. Even though this is not multiplayer, it does appear like there is a way that you can put gear up for sale, and it seems like people can buy it with one of the in-game currencies. I think it is the non-real money currency from what I'm seeing. There is also a shop where you can spend either your in-game currency or the real money currency, and it looks like the real money currency is used for cosmetic items from what I saw, and then things like additional bag space and an item that will reduce your cost upon death, like the death penalty. And also like a really, really robust achievement system, which provides you with some of that in-game currency that allows you to unlock like the bag slots and things like that. There are a couple of things that seem locked either in the beta or at the level I'm at. And there's just like systems upon systems upon systems here. But it does add, I think, some longevity to the game, but I do worry that you could make it maybe too complex. But overall, it seems like there is quite a bit of character customization through picking what skills you want to play and then what augmentations you add to that skill. and then through the very robust talent system. The gameplay feels quite smooth and it's intuitive, and all of these skills and talents and everything seem to come together in pretty interesting ways. You know, you can activate skills, drink potions, pick up loot, and move with relative ease with the on-screen controls. I still wish it was on the PC. You know, half of your screen is filled up by this overlay, and the text just is a little bit too small for my aged eyes to make out. My dream would really to have this be playable on PC and mobile, and have cross-play, and that seems to be what their end goal is. I've read some forums and some notes from the developers, and it seems like maybe that's where they're heading with this. Though I do have a couple of, you know, factors that I don't love. This is single player only, which is very odd for this genre and also for the Torchlight series. Even though the first game was single player only, every game after that was multiplayer and had a pretty big multiplayer following. Maybe it becomes more important later, but like I've never run out of mana. It seems to fill up so quickly. So I don't know if maybe late game you start using it, but I could literally spam my abilities all day and never run out of mana. It also is missing some of the flavor of Torchlight. Like in all the previous games, there was like a more technology-based character, be it like the engineer, the rail master. There was like a robot in Torchlight 3 from my memory. And I haven't seen a lot of that in like the 4 hours I've played. Like the Divine Shot, you know, with his guns kind of fills that gap, but it's kind of missing it to my mind. And while they reference a lot of things from the series, you know, it doesn't feel exactly like a Torchlight sequel. It almost feels like they took another game and maybe wrapped it in this Torchlight shell. Though I was never that into the story in the previous Torchlight game, so that's not a big loss to me. I mostly played it for the gameplay, and the story secondary. So while I've only spent a few hours with the game so far, I'm pleasantly surprised at this point, taking into consideration how poorly the previous game was received, and the initial thought that this was probably just a microtransaction-laden ripoff, taking advantage of the name. The gameplay's fun, the mechanics, between the different characters, the systems, the skills, the talents, all come together in really interesting ways, and the developer seems keen to make this a worthy successor to those first two Torchlight games, so I'm going to keep an eye out on this. I'll play some more of it. There is going to be a reset, from my understanding, like tomorrow, so I'm kind of reluctant to put a ton of hours into it right now. But if I can continue access to the beta, I'll probably do some more coverage in the future as I play more of it. I'm going to sign off here, and as always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing. I would very much appreciate it. Thanks again. Have a good night.